Greetings all, this is Harry Nick, how are you guys going? Earlier today on FFG's X-Wing website we got a new update for Wave 2 of X-Wing 2nd Edition pertaining to some cards from the Resistance faction, one of the two new factions that are going to be split off. In 1st edition, the Resistance was part of the Rebellion, and in 2nd edition, it's going to be completely separate. So it's good to keep that in mind when we're analysing these things, because you can't really compare it to the way they used to function. There is a lot of similarities, but there are a lot of things that now work differently as well. Now, before I dive into these, I haven't done one of these videos in a little while, so just as a quick primer, I live in Australia. FFG puts these out sometime in the middle of the day over in America, which for us is in the wee hours of the morning, in the middle of the night here in Australia. So I only see this stuff when I wake up in the morning, and by that stage most other YouTubers have already put out their content for this kind of stuff. But the advantage that gives me is I can talk to you guys on social media and get a kind of a gauge on the audience reaction on this kind of stuff before I come to make this video. So if you're interested in getting involved with the conversation at all, join my Facebook, my Twitter account. All of that is in the description down below. Also, since the last time I did one of these news videos, we have a Patreon on the channel now, and if you contribute to that, you can also join the Discord where I talk directly to the patrons. We've actually been chatting all day about these cards. These look really cool. Been a lot of hype around the kind of things here, a lot of very interesting abilities on these cards, and indeed that's what we have here. We have a bunch of upgrade cards and one new pilot card that we didn't previously see, although we pretty much guessed what it was. In fact, let's start off with that. Rey on the Millennium Falcon. Rey is Initiative 5. Her ability reads, when you defend or perform an attack, if the enemy ship is in your forward firing arc, you may spend one force to change one of your blank results to a evade or hit result. In contrast to her 1st edition ability, this is just pretty much a straight conversion of what's going on. It's less risky, it's just converting one result. That gives you mathematically pretty much the same result as rerolling 2 blank dice. Although in 2nd edition, again, there are different interactions, so it's a bit difficult to compare these. What's probably most interesting about this card actually is you have a look at the bottom of the card. It says Scavenge YT1300, not like the modified YT1300 on the Rebellion. So this is actually technically a different ship with different stats. And this actually has 2 fewer shields, and the rotate arc symbol has gone from being white to being red. Be interesting to see if there's any issues with the dial, whether any of that's changed, although I wouldn't be surprised if there isn't. But most importantly, how is that going to reflect in the points? We don't know the costings of any of these yet, so it will be interesting to see how this works. Now, Rey does combo quite nicely with a couple of cards we're going to talk about in this article, but I'll get back to that when we get through these upgrade cards. Let's dive into these going alphabetically, starting with Mr. C-3PO himself, and I'm going to talk a lot about each of these because there is a lot of really cool interactions with these. Indeed, a lot of really unique, spicy abilities. C-3PO, while you coordinate, you may choose a friendly ship beyond range 2 if they have a calculate on their action bar. After you perform a calculate or coordinate action, gain 1 calculate token. Plus he gives the ship he's on a calculate action and a red coordinate. I spent a lot of time today trying to think about the kind of archetypes we could put C-3PO in. The first thing that really jumps out at me is a kind of ace support, kind of like a Palpace list, but on the Resistance obviously. The problem with this is there isn't really any great platform for C-3PO to go on. At this stage, it's the Resistance Bomber and YT1300, and neither of them are really a support chip per se. Maybe the Resistance Bomber if we have a light enough build, but that's going to rely on costings and stuff, and that thing's really, designed to be a bomber, so I don't think that's going to be that viable. I am interested in playing around with C-3PO on the Millennium Falcon though. I think that is absolutely worth having a conversation about. And what I like about C-3PO over other sort of strictly support crew options is he has a lot of versatility. He can be a great support option, but he can also really help out the ship that he is on. If you say put him on Rey, for example, flyer alongside Poe Dameron, we can have a nice asymmetric 2-ship build, and C-3PO can help out Rey or Poe when needed. Versatility is always a really good thing when you're flying aces, and the ability to give your ship 2 calculates or give Poe an extra calculate token and then get a calculate token on Rey could be very potent. One of the biggest issues with calculate is it leaves that ship bare without any tokens, so that means that that ship is no longer left out in the woods. If you're attacking with both of these platforms, you want to make sure they're performing on all cylinders, so to speak. This could, for example, modify both Rey and Poe's attack if, say, Rey has this calculate token and Poe has a target lock token thanks to C-3PO's coordinate. Could be very interesting. Also, another little bit of upside is he can pair with Tactical Officer to make his coordinate white. Now, I don't know how much C-3PO is going to cost. Maybe that's just not that feasible, but that is an option moving forward. My guess, though, is if we're going to want to burn 2 crew slots on the Falcon, we might want another high priority thing, especially with Rey. She has a few other really good options as well. So I don't think 3PO with a Tactical Officer is really what we want, but we'll see what happens. Maybe it works out really well costing wise. We have a new astromech in R2HA, and this one's very interesting. While you defend, you may spend your lock on the attacker to re-roll any number of defense dice. It essentially means that your target lock can be used on offense or defense, which is very, very good, actually. It means that you have a defensive bonus, or the option to have a defensive bonus when you have target locks. And usually the downside of taking a target lock is you leave yourself open to being attacked. And in the right situation, this can be really powerful. It also means that if your ship has a focus and a target lock, it can double mod its red dice or double mod its green dice. When I say the word double mod, I mean you can reroll dice and convert focus tokens. And when you modify dice in that order, there's a really high chance that you will convert all the dice. Now, I will say there is a slight lower chance of that happening green dice and red dice because there are more blank than focus results. The mathematics don't work out quite as well as they do with red dice. But nevertheless, versatility is always a good thing, and what I'm particularly looking at with R2HA is Poe Dameron, because Poe Dameron essentially has pushed the limit built into him. He is able to take 2 actions with relative ease. He has to stress himself out, but as we've learned from first edition, that is a very, very fair cost to be able to take 2 actions. If anything, it's a bit overpowered. And the fact of the matter is, you could take a target lock and focus, and then double mod your attacks or double mod your defense. You have the flexibility of seeing how well you roll on your attack. Maybe Poe, in some kind of niche situation, has to defend first against another Initiative 6 ship, and you have the flexibility of doing that, and that seems really, really powerful to me, especially if you happen to be coordinating with C-3PO and giving him even more actions. One of the biggest things which really holds back Poe from being a true ace is the fact that he only has 2 green dice, and I think a nice defense buff like this could really sort of push him into behaving a bit more like an ace, being able to take a few more shots and completely dodge them. I really like the potential that has. Now, I will say, we do not have BB-8 revealed yet, and it might turn out that BB-8 is a great combo with Poe Dameron. It wouldn't be surprising, of course, Poe and BB-8 do fly together in the film, and they were designed to work together in first edition, despite the fact that Poe actually tend to be flew more with R2-D2 in the meta. But I think this is a combination we should seriously have a look at. Chewbacca Returns for the Resistance. We now have 3 crew Chewbaccas. How cool is that? He has 2 charges, set up, lose 1 charge, which essentially means he has 1 charge at the start of the game, but a maximum of 2 in case that was confusing. After a friendly ship at range 0 to 3 is dealt 1 damage card, recover 1 charge. And just to clarify further, range 0 does mean it can be the ship he's on as well. While you perform an attack, you may spend 2 charges to change 1 eyeball result to a critical result. And this is interesting. I wasn't really sure how to assess this at first. And the more I think about it, the more I'm very happy with this. Now, obviously, it's going to come down to costing. If it's very expensive, the sort of efficient nature of this starts to break down. But the fact of the matter is, Chewbacca can give you focus conversions on your attacks without having to take any actions, and that's really, really good. It also rewards an aggressive game strategy, which is seemingly what the Resistance is going to want to be doing. They're going to want to do flashy things and get all up in their opponent's face. And from that point of view, it seems like Chewbacca plays into that quite strongly. Indeed, so does Han Solo, which we'll talk about in a second. But I like this. Anything that gives you offensive mods without having to take actions is always something worth having a look at. Finn returns, this time in the gunner slot. While you defend or perform a primary attack, if the enemy is in your forward firing arc, you may add 1 blank result to your roll. This dice can be re-rolled or otherwise modified, so the same as it was in first edition, but just with an extra bit of clarification. Still works great with Rey. Now, interestingly, Finn didn't really do much else in first edition. There were some niche things where you could have like mass re-rolls with Janors, and people were playing around with that. But essentially the only place that Finn ever saw play was on Rey's Falcon. In this version of the game, we actually have another application for him, and we'll talk about that in a second, but let's keep moving on for now. On to Han Solo, as I was talking about before, kind of plays around with the same game strategy that Chewbacca has. He gives your ship a red evade. After you perform an evade action, gain additional evade tokens equal to the number of enemy ships at range 0 to 1. Again, that includes ships that you're bumping as well. You can actually gain more evade tokens than ships that will attack you, which isn't really any upside. You can only spend 1 per defense, but I guess it's an option if you have any other use for them. I guess if you have Duke on your ship or something like that. A bit niche, but there are some added upsides to having extra evade tokens. And what's really cool about him, again, he rewards you for very aggressive game strategies. I can't imagine he's going to see too much consistency and too much meta play, but he's an interesting concept nonetheless. There was a nice image here posted in the article of the Falcon sort of bearing down on 2 TIE fighters. And this strikes me as a bit of a Magical Christmas Land kind of situation. Yeah, if the Falcon or whatever platform Han Solo's on getting focus fired, it's going to be very handy, but it's not always going to be the way your opponent chooses to attack you. I think the best way of using Han is going to be putting him on some kind of a platform that demands a response. If you are really aggressively getting all up in your opponent's face, doing a lot of damage with a certain ship, perhaps your opponent just has to answer it and has to deal with shooting through all these evade tokens, and that's where Han could come into his own. Just remember, when you're empowering your opponent to make choices and play around certain things, it can lead to some feel-bad moments. And just another comment about Han, and this really comes down to how effectively costed he is. If he is relatively cheap, we could actually put him on a platform that already has a white evade. There currently isn't one that has a white evade that could take him, but that could be something in the future, and maybe if Han is efficient enough, that could be an option, and maybe there's an ace platform that can really capitalize off that. This is kind of just spitballing for ideas in the future for the Resistance, but for the time being, it's pretty much the Falcon or the Resistance Bomber, and yeah, neither of those options for him really wow me all that much. We also have here Rey's Millennium Falcon. Now, before we go on, shouldn't it be Chewie's? I don't know. I'm kind of the opinion that the Falcon in the current Star Wars storyline should belong to Chewbacca, but that's just me. If you have 2 or fewer stress tokens, you can execute the red Segnor's loop, so that obviously remains on the dial, maneuvers or perform a boost or rotate turret action even while stressed, and this seems very powerful. Especially when we're talking about Rey that wants to get things in her forward firing arc. She could activate while stressed, then do an S loop and then do a boost. That seems pretty good. If that is the way you have to make sure you get something in your forward firing arc, you're going to be glad you have it. Again, it's going to come down to cost. This is a very large amount of utility, but again, that could be factored into the cost of the platform itself, so it's a bit difficult to assess that based on this. Bottom line, this really does seem to be playing into what Rey wants to do, so that's really, really cool. I like that idea. Okay, let's talk about the 2 cards that have really got me interested in the Resistance, Rose and Paige Tycho. Let's start off with Rose. While you defend or perform an attack, you may spend 1 of your results to acquire a lock on the enemy ship, and I think the utility on this is just fantastic. Again, it's going to come down to how much it costs. It's obviously got to be a bit more expensive than fire control systems, right? But the way you use it just feels really, really good. It does not say execute a target lock action that acquires it on the ship that you were fighting. It doesn't work like that. It says acquire a target lock, which means you can target lock and use this in the same turn. And that is actually huge. Because if you spend a target lock and you roll a blank into a blank, well, guess what? No more feel bads for you, my friend. You can spend that blank and get another target lock on the defender and really, really pressure them. Roll 5 dice. They're all blank. Who cares? Just get rid of one of them, reroll the other 4 dice, and get value out of all your results. This is such a boost of consistency to red dice. It's not funny. Also, we just spoke about that R2 unit before. We don't currently have a platform that can use both of these guys, but that offers a great amount of flexibility. So if the Resistance ever offers us something that has an astromech and a crew slot, it means on offense and on defense, you have the option of utilizing a target lock. That seems very powerful. Getting to use 2 a turn, rerolling all those dice is going to offer you a lot more consistency. I think Rose is pretty legit. Also, combos very well with Finn, which is what I was talking about before. Finn gives you blank results. Perfect. Rose can use those blank results on offense or defense. You could potentially target lock one ship on your attack and go, oh, no, actually, I want to target lock that ship. So when they attack you, you move it over there and there and there, then you take a target lock. You can just move target locks around willy-nilly. And that's going to be a lot of fun. I think Rose offers a lot of flexibility. The fact that you can chain target locks together, I think, is pretty legitimate. I think Rose is going to have to be at least sort of 5, 6, 7, maybe 8 points. Her ability feels really, really strong to me. And Paige as well. I like the look of this. She's a gunner. After you perform a primary attack, you may drop 1 bomb or rotate your arc. After you are destroyed, you may drop 1 bomb. And I was thinking about all the interactions on this today, and I had to check a few rules before talking about this because it's very interesting. It does specifically say bomb, which means proton bombs, seismic charges, that kind of stuff. You can't use Paige to drop like a Cononet or anything with the mine keyword. You must drop something specifically with the bomb keyword. This is not the device symbol, it's specifically the bomb keyword. Just be careful with that when list building. Also, the fact that it allows you to rotate your arc or drop a bomb. This seems like a lot of upside. It's basically Agile Gunner with different options. And it's not strictly as good as Agile Gunner because you have to perform an attack. And if you can't perform an attack, you don't get the option to do that. Also with Agile Gunner, you do it a little bit later in the turn, and that may give your opponent a bit more information and change their targets and priority. Look, these situations are so niche. This is essentially Agile Gunner for all intents and purposes. And the fact that it gives you option to drop a bomb as well is really good. And that interaction is a lot of fun. Bombs specifically say, well, at least the ones we have right now, they detonate at the end of the activation phase. So if you drop a bomb with Paige, unless there is some kind of rules thing that changes based on Paige and it happens at the end of the turn, I don't think there will be. I'm pretty confident that Paige dropping a bomb to go off the next turn, it means that you can drop 2 bombs from the same position, or a bomb and a mine if you drop the bomb one turn and the next turn drop a mine. Remember, you're not allowed to drop more than 1 device per turn, but because Paige works after you move 1 turn and before you move the next, it actually means that ship is in the same position. That means you could drop 2 seismic charges, you could drop 2 proton bombs if you're absolutely convinced your opponent's going to fly into them. You can really punish them for that. If you have a seismic and a proton overlapping, the seismic can latch onto a rock over here and the proton can go off in situation, meaning you have a larger bubble of control. That could be very powerful. It just seems like there's a lot of flexibility there. Now, it is worth pointing out because again, this is stuff we have to check. Trajectory Simulator does not work with Paige. Trajectory Simulator specifically says during the system phase. So you're not going to be able to launch a bomb forward with Trajectory Simulator with Paige. But to be honest, Paige can still drop a bomb during 1 turn and trajectory at the next turn anyway. So you still kind of have that option regardless. There seems to be a lot of flexibility built into this card, and at the end of the day, if your bombs aren't going to do it for you, moving the arc means you get a shot the next turn. I've spoken about Agile Gunner already. I love that card. Just the action economy alone, it is worth giving your opponent information just to have that action economy, and I think it is just as relevant on Paige Tycho. Oh, and on top of all that, you drop a bomb when you explode. Fantastic. I think it's going to have a lot of application. Agile Gunner right now is sitting at 10 points. I think Paige is easily going to be at least 15 points. Just a heads up, guys, this is not going to be a cheap thing. But this is the Resistance. This is essentially the Rebellion on steroids. This is the kind of thing we have to expect. But really, really powerful effects are always really fun. They always sort of really excite sort of the more casual players, and from the point of view of the more tournament grindy people, it's always fun to try and learn how to break these kind of effects. It's going to be a lot of fun playing with all this stuff. And indeed, that is it. Now, the spread that was shown off in this article was actually the same spread we had in the other article, and I actually went through that in the previous video I did on the Resistance, so click the annotation up here if you want to see my explanation of all that. At least all the preliminary stuff we can see. The article still confirms that we are expecting this in the 4th quarter of 2018, so hopefully a Christmas release for this stuff. stuff. In the meantime, guys, if you want to stay up to date with all the latest news from X-Wing, like and subscribe. Like me on Facebook, follow me on Twitter and Reddit. Consider supporting the Patreon. Thank you so much to all my patrons who have been supporting the channel so far. You guys have done a lot to support the channel. I really appreciate that. I will catch you guys in the next video.